I want to talk about phones for a minute. Manufacturers, their profit margins are massive. All right. Some of them not so much. Like Blue. I don't know about OnePlus. I think that phone might be as cheap as it's going to get. $750 for the best one, which has 12 gigabytes of RAM, 256 gigabytes of storage. Um, but that's not what I really wanted to talk about was how fast, like how good of specs they have now, because most phones that you can get that are flagships are going to be one of the best phones on the market right now, because they're all going to use the same processor. They're all going to have very similar amounts of RAM and storage and very similar screens. It's really, at this point, it's just a matter of, do you want a notch? Do you want a motorized camera? Do you want a hole on your screen? And even to some people, just what company do you want to support? Because they're all going to be pretty much the same price, and they're all going to function more or less the same. The only exception being Apple, where Apple doesn't run Android, so there's going to be some pretty big differences there. But even then, you could say iOS mimics Android or Android mimics iOS, whichever way you want to go. It's just phones have gotten so fast lately to the point where the OnePlus 7, if I remove the GPU from my laptop, it would be able to rival my laptop. The Snapdragon 855 that it has in there is easily able to rival the CPU I have in my laptop, which is a Intel Core i7 8750H. It may not have as many threads, but its clock speed is going to be pretty similar. You know? And I want to talk about durability. Most phones, one drop without a case or any kind of protection onto hard concrete or linoleum floor, they're done. Their screen is fucked. And with the curved screens that we're starting to see on some devices, that if you want to make sure you get a good screen as a replacement, it's going to be five, six, $700. For example, I have a damaged screen on my Galaxy S9 Plus. It's had a crack in it for about a year and a little place where it's been shattered for like 6 months. And recently, the digitizer has started to get damaged, and I'm unable to use the top half of my screen half the time, most of the time, really. And it's really, really problematic because, like, I need the top half of my screen, even with the one-handed mode. Initially, I could use the one-handed mode and have full access to the screen using one-handed mode, but now the thing is spread, and it's spreading even more now to the point where soon I'm just going to have a small sliver at the bottom of the screen that I'm able to use, and that's going to be it. So I wanted to talk about phones, their durability. What can we do to make phones better? I think Energizer has the right idea. Because Energizer, for those of you who don't know, is making a phone that's like an inch thick. It's a brick. Alright? It's a brick of a phone. And it's got a massive battery in it that they're claiming is going to be able to last you a week. Now, I don't even want to think about how long that battery is going to take to charge. I mean, you'll probably be sitting there for 24 hours trying to charge that battery, unless they can think of some incredible fast charge technology, which, you know what, they probably are. To be honest, it's probably going to come packaged with some insane charger that's about probably the size of a regular phone. And that's that's actually kind of what I'm excited for. Um, Most phone screens can be scratched by just things in your pocket. I mean, there are a bunch of scratches on my S9 Plus that should not be there. They just should not be there. And it's because, I work at Home Depot, so there's a bunch of things going on. Like sand will get into my pocket, and like dirt will get into my, like a bunch of just crap will get into my pockets and like start scraping on the phone screen. And I don't really have that big of a protective case, and I never had a screen protector on my phone because I'm normally very responsible with them, and I didn't think that this many scratches would start to appear at Home Depot just by working there. Which is not at all Home Depot's fault. It's really my fault. Um, but I want to talk about, exactly what can we do to make phones better. And one of the biggest things that I have is when a new Gorilla Glass comes out, manufacturers are like, oh, great, we can make the phone even thinner because we can use thinner glass. Don't do that. Because Gorilla Glass should be a few millimeters thick, and I'm pretty sure now we're bordering on a fraction of a millimeter. Given that phones are only like, 5 millimeters thick now? When back in the original iPhone 3, they were pretty thick. They were pretty thick boys. I want to say it was close to maybe 10 millimeters. So we've cut it in half, sure, but at what cost? You know? Like, what have we traded to be able to do this? Well, we've traded in a lot of phones. We've traded the headphone jack. Apple started this trend, and I certainly do hate them for it because I drive a car that doesn't have Bluetooth capabilities. And I don't want to get some kind of adapter that uses radio signals because, in my experience, those don't really work. I have used one in the past and I hated it. There was so much static, and it's to the point where I will keep a Bluetooth speaker in my car for music. And I don't even fuck with the radio built into the car, Because I don't listen to the actual radio much because I like having control over what I listen to. And it's one of those things. It's one of those things where I really do believe that we can easily make phones so much better at very little extra cost. We just got to give them thicker batteries and not thicker thicker top glass for the screen. And that's what I want. Is I want a phone that I don't have to worry about dropping because the glass is thick enough to where it can take it, where I don't have to worry about, oh, if I drop my phone, am I going to have to spend $50 on a screen protector, especially with some of these newer phones with their fancily shaped displays. A screen protector can get pretty expensive. I'm pretty sure, last I checked, for my S9, a screen protector costs $35 for a good one. Yeah, you can always get those plastic ones, but those aren't going to stop a shatter. The point of a screen protector is to be a piece of glass that will take the shatter for your phone. A piece of plastic isn't going to do that. And I'd like to call back to 2017. I found I was working at Cracker Barrel at the time, and I was riding my bike home. I took a different route home, and I saw this. I saw a phone on the side of the road. And I was like, okay, what the hell? So I stop, I pick it up, I want to see, does it have any battery on it? Can I figure out who owns this phone? And I was able to, and I was able to return the phone, and I didn't try and peel off the screen. I saw that the screen was completely shattered, like barely usable. And I get there and it's like, you're going to need a new screen because this phone, for some reason, had an indent where the screen should be, and the screen protector made it look flush like it should be. Like the phone was kind of concave. It was really weird. Um, and the guy was like, "Ah, no, I won't." And he sticks his finger in the corner and just peels off the screen protector. And I was like, "Huh." And he shows me, and the screen's like perfectly fine. He's like, "All I need to do is go to Walmart and get a screen protector." It was some Sony phone. So I think it was one of the Vios or something. Maybe he had a case on it I didn't notice or something. I don't really know. Um, but yeah, he thanked me for returning his phone, blah blah blah. But the point is that phone still was 100% functional. There was absolutely nothing wrong with that phone. All that man had to go do was buy a new screen protector. And I don't know how it ended up on the side of the road. He was probably letting one of his kid use it because I saw he had a pretty young kid. And his kid probably just threw it out the window. He got mad at Angry Birds. It was just like, yeet! And chucked it out the window. And I actually remember the man, while I was working that day, came in looking for a phone. I asked him for a description of the phone, and he's like, it's a black Sony phone that has a picture of a husky as its lock screen. And, at the time, Cracker Barrel had this thing where if we found a lost phone, you had to tell us the passcode, and it had to work. And if the passcode was right, we'd give you the phone. If it didn't have a passcode, we'd go through the camera roll and try and find a picture of you with their permission, because some people's camera rolls are pretty fucking disgusting. I'm gonna be honest with you. So I just want to talk about, you know, we're so focused on enhancing the technology. The OnePlus 7 Pro has 3 cameras. It's got a wide angle lens and it's got a 16 megapixel, it's got a 48 megapixel, like it's got 3 cameras and then a pop-up 16 megapixel front camera. And I'm sitting here thinking, yeah, that's great and all. 48 megapixel, and one of the cameras has 3 times optical zoom. So I'm sitting here that's great. That's great. And I'm seeing some of the pictures that people are taking, and they look like professional photographers. I'm not complaining about that. But in all honesty, we should, we've got good enough cameras for now. They're taking pictures at much higher of a resolution than the screen can even display. And in many cases, the cameras are toned down to match the resolution of the display or be slightly higher than the resolution of the display. Their sensors aren't being used to their full capacity, is what I'm trying to say. And so I remember me back when the OnePlus One came out. This was probably 2015, 2016. I got one, and my best friend, he's still my best friend, his name is Gabe, he had the Samsung Galaxy Note 4. Now, these were 2 phones that were so incredibly close together in spec. They had very similar battery size, they had very similar screen size, they had, I think, pretty much the exact same resolution. They had different CPUs, but they were so closely matched that it didn't even matter. And I remember me and my friend would always start listing off the specs of our phone, like, oh, mine's better because I've got a 61 hertz display. You've only got a 60, loser. And and he would shoot back, well, I've got a faster processor than you. Your processor has to work harder to push out that 61 hertz. And, it was a whole bag. Yes, for anyone wondering, the OnePlus One, for some reason, had a 61 hertz display, and it kept that. Like, it used that. Like, it wasn't a 61 hertz display that just was displaying at 60. No, it was always on its 61 hertz mode, and I do not know why. Maybe getting that weird screen was cheaper at the time, because this was like a $300 phone. OnePlus is always, well, in the past they've been cheap smartphone flagship specs. Yeah, we'll cut a few corners here, like the OnePlus One, came out around the time that every phone had a fingerprint reader and the OnePlus One didn't. And that's one of the things that Gabe used over me. But our cameras were almost exactly the same. Like, we put them both up on a tripod at one point, and we took a picture of this tree. And we brought him up on his computer, and we just closely looked at the photos. Like, the resolution was the same, and their color gamut was more or less the same, and the pictures, apart from the very slight perspective shift, were almost exactly the same. So I don't like. I remember we were like fighting over this at one point, and it almost destroyed our friendship. Then his mother got involved, and he's like, "What's it matter what phone you have? You should just be happy you have a phone that you don't have to pay for." And he's like, "Well, actually, I do have to pay for my phone. My father financed this for me. He just pays for the service, and I don't even know how long he's gonna do that." And she's like, "All right, whatever, Justin. Like, just you both have phones. Like, don't let that destroy your friendship that you got different phones." And I just said, "You know what, Gabe? If it came down to it, I'd chuck this car out a window, or I'd chuck this phone out a window if it meant saving our friendship." And he said pretty much the same thing. And I remember I dropped that phone so many times. And the worst thing that ever happened was a small scratch on the top of the screen. Like, it was a gash. But my mother was like, "Oh, that's fine." And she did this thing, and the scratch was just not there anymore. I don't even remember what she did. And the scratch didn't even bother me too much because it wasn't even on the screen. It was on the bezel. So there was that. And that phone had no waterproof. I remember how I broke it. I was in the bathroom. I put it on the tank of the toilet. I wash my hands. I turn around, and the phone is slipping. I'm like, "No, no, no!" And I wasn't fast enough, and it fell in the bowl. So I fish it out, and it's fried. It's not turning back on. Thankfully, at that time, I had already gotten another phone. I think I had the iPhone 6S. So I didn't mind too much, but it was pretty annoying. Because I used that phone to play YouTube because it had a better screen on it. I remember. Plus, on iPhones in YouTube, you can't rotate it horizontally for some reason. I also remember I got Apple Music, and the way you fucking log into Apple Music on an Android is so ass backwards. So you log in, and then it does that verification thing. And then you have to log in again, but at the end of the password, you put your verification code. And then even then, the user experience of the Android app for Apple Music is so bad. To the point where it pissed me off so much that I was actually gonna keep Apple Music when I got my Samsung. And it pissed me off so much how bad the UI was, I canceled my membership and I got Spotify instead. So, yeah, and I still say that, while it may not be illegal, actually, it very well might be illegal what Apple is doing there. I don't know. There's probably something that's considered either, anti-competitive or something in there by doing that. By having such a fluid user interface on your own devices, but then when it comes to competitors making it so bad to where they just want to cancel their service, I mean, you're really hurting yourself there, Apple. Give Google like what $2 it takes to renew the membership on Google Play. Just give it to them, because then you still have $8 to yourself. Like it's not bad. Like, what is it, 30% that Google takes? Yeah, so it's $3. You still get $7, Apple. And that's $7 a month. That's not a one-time thing. That's $7 a month as long as I have the service. But it was so bad, I just canceled it. So you didn't get anything. Um, and that's another thing. These services, they're getting overbearing. Like a lot of, especially older phones, they came with a lot of bloatware. And it was a big problem. I remember, like, you'd get a new phone and you'd spend 30 minutes uninstalling all the bloatware. I remember my friend bought the some LG phone a while back, and it came with like 3 different app stores, and one of them he couldn't disable, I think. And my phone, it came with some Final Fantasy game installed on it, the S9 Plus. It came with some kind of Final Fantasy game installed on it, and that's one thing that really upsets me. I like the Final Fantasy series. I do, but I don't play the mobile games because I don't like gacha games. Um, I don't play very many mobile games in general. You know, I'll emulate the occasional NES game on my phone, but beyond that, I don't. Um, and I remember I was uninstalling all the apps that came on my phone that I didn't care about. And I come across the Final Fantasy app, and I'm like, all right, what the hell is this? And I sit there, and I open the game. I don't immediately uninstall it. I open it, and immediately it starts downloading a big file. And I'm like, all right, yeah, I'm not fucking with this shit. Um, like the game wasn't actually installed on the phone. What was installed was an installer. So I just removed it. Which I've heard other people say that the game was completely installed on their phone. So somehow I must have gotten a weird phone that didn't have the game completely installed. I also had some test images on the hard drive too. So I'm guessing someone got lazy when making my phone. Um, regardless, I think that's pretty funny. Um, but still, like the bloatware, while not as big of an issue today, I'd say like in terms of how many apps are installed, I'd say it's still a pretty big issue because you're getting these predatory games pre-installed. I'm pretty sure there's a phone out there that has Fortnite pre-installed on it, and if I ever buy a phone with Fortnite pre-installed on it, you better bet it's going right back to where it came from. I'm getting a full refund on that device. Um, so, but the bloatware issue is, while not as big of an issue as it used to be, it's just something that we've all gotten used to. Apple phones have zero bloatware. I'm going to give Apple credit for that. There is zero bloatware on there apart from Apple's typically pre-installed things like the one thing nobody ever uses, which is the Stocks app. I mean, really? Do you need that installed? But yeah, Apple phones are 100% usable out of the box. You charge them up, you set them up, you transfer from your old iPhone, and you are done with setup. Possibly forever with an iPhone. But with Android, there's so many settings that you'll need to spend a few days fine-tuning the phone, going in and out of settings, just to get it just the way you want it. And that is one advantage that Apple has, is they are simpler to use for setup. But Android phones, they're not made for the basic white girl, for example. Like, oh, I just follow the crowd. Oh, I'm not like other girls, like that girl. Um. So, and older people who don't want to fine tune their device, they just want a phone that's gonna work. I mean, my grandmother still uses a flip phone that she's had since 2005, and it stopped charging one day, and so I was coming over the next week, and I couldn't reach her because her phone wasn't charging, so I'm like, oh my god, oh my god, I was freaking out to the point where I actually called paramedics to check her house. and they found that she was perfectly fine and called me back. And I was like, well, why isn't she calling? And she's like, oh, well, apparently her phone's not charging. I knew exactly what phone she had. And so I stopped at a battery store and I was like, hey, do you have this battery? And I'm like, no, we can mail it to you though. And I was like, all right, yeah, great. How long will that take? And I'm like, oh, 1 to 2 days. I was like, oh, perfect. So I I got the battery and it turns out it wasn't charging because there was so much crap in the charging port. Like there was so much dirt caked on in there. So I just wasted $30 getting a battery that she didn't even need. So then we went back out. I got her a little charging dock for the battery. Um, and I told her, hey, you just put the battery on here. It'll charge. You can also put your phone here too. And then when your battery dies, you take it out. You put that one in and put the other one back on charger. You're done. And she actually was really happy that I did that because she was looking, because the phone's battery was so old that it wasn't lasting her all day anymore. Like it lasts for like 4 or 5 hours. Oh, that's another thing. Battery life is becoming an issue now. I remember back when, you wouldn't really have to worry about that. I fell asleep today. My phone is at 70%. 5 hours later, I wake up, it's at 33. And that is a problem. What is the phone doing to the point where it drains nearly 50% of its battery in 5 hours sitting idle? I didn't receive any calls. Screen wasn't on. I wasn't watching any videos to fall asleep to. The phone was off, laying on the nightstand, just sitting idle. And it used nearly 40% of its battery, 50% or whatever it is. I'm not good at math. So what was the phone doing in that time to use that much battery sitting idle? I checked. It didn't update any apps. It didn't update itself. It didn't update my watch. Well, not like it could. My watch broke. And it's one of those things that I'm not sure what the hell happened. And that's not the first time this has happened. Anytime that I don't plug my phone in to take a nap, that something like that happens where it uses a unreasonable amount of battery life sitting there idle. Or even when I'm at work, like I'll go on my break after 2 hours and it'll drain like 20% of its battery from being in my pocket. That is a little more understandable because in my pocket at work, it's tracking my steps and it's doing a bunch of other things at work, like maybe trying to look for a cellular signal because where I work is very bad for that. And also at work, I look up items a lot for customers, but either way, doesn't really matter, does it? Anyways. So there are times where I will have to take the walk of shame to the back room because we've got a little charging deck back there for all of our phones. So in the middle of my shift, there have been times where I've taken the walk of shame to go plug my phone in because, I'm at 20% and I've been at work for 4 hours and I've got 4 more hours to go. So, and I'd like to watch a video or two on my break, but I can't do that because my phone doesn't last. I remember the worst battery life I ever got on this phone. I went to Chicago, and my thing said 5GE. It was like, all right, 5GE. All right, cool. What's that? 5G network is it. And I never dropped below 5 bars on that network in Chicago. And so I'm sitting here. I'm like, all right. So this is pretty much what 5G is going to feel like. And so, but my battery started draining super fast to the point where 30 minutes later, charging the whole way there, and Chicago's like 2 hours away from where I live, And so I'm sitting there. 30 minutes later, I am at 50%. It used half of my battery in 30 minutes. Half of my battery for half an hour. That is some Nintendo Switch level bullshit. So I was like, hey, we gotta go back to the car. So we wander around the city for like another 30 minutes till we find the parking garage that I parked in. Now, keep in mind, I wasn't using location service. The person I was with was doing that. And, I wasn't on my phone a lot. The only thing I was doing is, once we got out of the parking garage, I played a little bit of music for us through my earphones. And after that, I didn't do anything. And that music was saved to the device. Like, it wasn't streaming it. Yeah, I mean, granted, I was using Spotify, but it was one of the albums I saved in my phone. So I don't know what happened because when I went to check what was using so much battery, it just said Android. And I don't know what that could be anything. So I don't know what happened. So we go back to the car. I have like a 20,000 milliamp hour battery, or it's like 10,000 or however the hell big it is, hour battery in my car that I charged up the night before. And I take the cable out of the charge port of the car and I just plug it into the battery and we go. But what started happening was I had to turn my phone completely off for it to start increasing its battery life. And I'm sitting here like, do people in Chicago have to do this every day? So I started looking for people on their phones, looking for people using the same phone as me, and I would stop them and ask them, hey, how's your battery life on that phone? And most of them said, oh, it's pretty good. Like after they started doing the 5G thing, yeah, my battery was a little bit shitty. But this is the people who knew that what they were talking about. So it was like, oh, my phone's in some kind of adaptation phase. And it was like, this is bullshit. What the fuck do you have to adapt to? You're a fucking robot. I was pissed. So I was like, how did you get it to stop? And he's like, I didn't. I just had to carry a battery around. And I was like, great. So eventually I was able to turn my phone back on and it just stopped. It just stopped draining the battery the way it was. Because through the battery, it's a 2.4 amp hour battery. And through that, even through that, it was still slowly, like I just slowed down the inevitable. Pretty much. So I just turned the phone off to get it to like 70%. Or however high I got it, and I just turned it back on, and it just stopped draining the battery so fast. So I don't know what the hell was going on. So, I mean, like, it was really interesting to see that, because that I've never seen anything like that happen to a phone. Even so, the fact that people in Chicago who have the same phone as me said the same thing. Like, I asked like 4 or 5 people, and like 3 of them had no idea what the fuck I was talking about. They just wanted me to go fuck off. And I can understand that. You got some random guy you've never seen before coming up to you asking you about your phone. Like, oh, this is going to lead into either me getting stabbed or me getting scammed. So, especially in Chicago. Chicago. You're a real shit sack of a city when it comes to crime. Either way, it's one of the things that I still don't understand about my phone. I just don't. Battery life is becoming a bigger and bigger issue the further we move down the line, because as phones get more and more powerful, they don't always get more and more power efficient. So sometimes they'll remain around the same. Sometimes they'll get a little worse. Sometimes they'll get a little better. But it's really hard to tell. Like, you gotta know deep how these chipsets work to be able to tell for sure, are they more power efficient, or are they gonna suck more battery than analogy here. So you really you got to know the hardware to know what you're in for battery life. Yeah, I mean, yeah, some manufacturers will be like all day battery life, but guess who said that, and for what phone? The Samsung, and for the Galaxy S9 Plus, all day battery life. When in reality, it's about 6 hours. I'm like completely honest. It's about 6 hours. So that was a fucking lie because 6 hours it isn't all day. At minimum, I would consider all day battery life to be 12 hours. And there needs to be systems put in place to where tests need to be done on all devices, and if they don't hit a certain threshold, they can't say all day battery life. Like at minimum, 12 hours is where I would say all day battery life is. Maybe 10 hours. But 6 hours? Really? My Switch gets better. And that's a gaming console. That's going to be at full load most of the time I'm using it. It can play Breath of the Wild, what, 3 hours? I'll just carry a portable battery around, charge it 0 to 100 twice, and I'll be playing Zelda for 6 hours. What the hell? There's no point for that. Like, there's no reason to lie about your battery life. Like, it's fine. I mean, if you've got a powerful enough phone, people are going to buy it anyways. Or if your phone has that fancy gimmick everyone wants, like an in-screen fingerprint sensor. Or say you're the first to figure out a functional folding phone. I'm looking at you, Samsung Galaxy Fold. I was so excited for that phone, and then I saw reviewers breaking them. And that's another thing. Do we really need foldable phones? Our phones have issues right now that are only going to carry to foldable phones. Yeah, like the screen cracking issue, yeah, that may not carry to a foldable phone, but it will to one of the foldable phones that has a screen on the back so you don't have to unfold it to use it. Like, for real, like, do we need foldable phones? Yeah, they're cool. I want one, but do I need one? I mean, in modern day America, a phone is pretty much a necessity. Like, not even just for like entertainment. I'm not even talking about that. For communication, like back before any phone, the mail system was an absolute necessity. It was the only way to convey, one of the only ways to convey information over long distances. And so we've reached the point where we can do that instantly. I can make a call halfway across the world, and it'd be connected quicker than this. So, oh shit! I just killed half the universe. Anyways, it'd be gone. Fuck. I'm thinking about Thanos now, but it'd be connected just instantly, just like that, and now everyone's dead. But what I'm saying is, we need to fix the problems that modern phones have. Screens are too fragile, battery life isn't big enough, headphone jacks. Apple led the charge in removing the headphone jack, and they said it was for the real estate inside of the phone and courage. Well, yeah, it takes courage to do that, Apple. Courage to stand up to Reddit and the internet, because you are one of the most hated companies on my list right now. And a lot of other people's lists too. I'd even go as far to say you're probably one of the most hated companies on the internet, right up there with Nestle, EA, and what's another scummy ass company? Coca-Cola? No. Yeah. But either way, it doesn't much matter because, in all honesty, I know these phone manufacturers, they're not gonna do much. They're gonna keep releasing new phones. They're gonna keep getting slightly more powerful. They're gonna have even more cool new features, but some of the big problems that they've had since the beginning are going to stay that way. And I know there are some manufacturers trying to fix that, but their solutions sometimes add more problems, you know? And Google is probably the only hope for this, which is, if they can find a way to severely reduce how much battery and processing load that Android uses when idle, that's the only way I can see this working. In all honesty, that's the only way I can see this really getting better is if Google themselves get involved. But I know that's not going to happen. So I guess I don't understand the point. I mean, making this video isn't going to impact anything at all. I mean, this video is just a fucking podcast at this point. But still, what I'm saying is, we gotta band together. Like, I hate doing this, but start a change.org petition. Because some companies do listen to those. Mostly indie companies, but, if we get, a couple million people to sign not an Indiegogo, to sign a change.org petition saying we want, we're fine with, how thick they are, how fast they are. We're fine with their screens. We're fine with all of that. We just want a bigger battery life. Give us a bigger battery. Because to me, like, if I take my S9 out of the case and try and use it like that, not only is it slippery and I'm going to drop it if I keep doing it like that, but if I use it too much in my hand without a case, it's so thin that my hand will start to cramp up. So, in some cases, phones have gotten too thin. And I know that's something that some phone manufacturers think is absolutely impossible, but it's possible. There are people out there whose hands are so big or so small to where these modern phones, if they try and use them without a case, or in some cases even with a case, they're gonna damage their hands. Like, their hands are gonna cramp up. And plus repetitive motion injury (RMI) is a real thing, and I've seen it happen through phones. I've seen people with RMI, or maybe it's carpal tunnel, in their thumbs because they text way too much. It's a thing. I have friends who suffer with this. It's a problem. But that was a real Carson laugh, wasn't it? But either way, this is something that needs to be addressed before we go any further with innovating smartphones. We've got some of the biggest innovators right now. Well, right now it's Samsung is the biggest smartphone innovator. And, maybe, a few other smaller companies here and there. But as of right now, it is Samsung. They are big enough to do so, and they can take the loss if these phones fail. And Apple, while they more or less invented the smartphone, they've become stagnant in the field that they're best at. They're not innovating very much anymore, and in all honesty, it's starting to hurt them. I'm seeing so many people go to Apple, and it's like industry people, like, not like people, like consumers. Like, I'm talking Google's head of AI went to Apple, and I'm like, I understand, but why? Like, I don't understand is what I meant. Like, why would you go to Apple? Like, I feel like he's not going to be used there because, as far as we know, Apple's not planning on making Siri any better. And Siri is a sack of shit. So out of the five, there's five of them now. Fuck. Out of some of the major AI assistants, I'm listing Cortana, Alexa, Google, Siri, and Bixby. Shut up, you sack of pee! My Alexa went off. Anyways. So, the worst one is Bixby, alright? I fucking hate Bixby. There's a button dedicated to Bixby on most Samsung devices now, and I hate it. I have an Amazon Echo, and I love it. It wakes me up in the morning sometimes. I mean, if I don't sleep through the alarm, I'll wake up and go, Alexa, shut the fuck up, and fall right back asleep. So when it works, it works. When I'm willing to cooperate, it works. And then there's Google as the second best. Cortana is in third. Siri is in fourth. And then there's Bixby, because fuck Bixby. I hate you and you should die. At least remove the button, Samsung. I mean, the Bixby button is the biggest problem I have with Bixby. It's made me resent Bixby and not want to use Bixby at all. To the point where every time I accidentally hit the Bixby button trying to turn my volume down or take a screenshot, I genuinely, my face cringes up and I fucking have an aneurysm. Okay, maybe that last part's a bit exaggerated, but you get the point. And I really want to see phones actually improve on what we want to see improved, which is battery life, screen durability, just durability in general. These modern phones, they have a great layout to do that. They've got more than one way to charge. Some of them even have 3 ways to charge. You can share power through another device. Wirelessly, you could just regular wireless charge, or you could use a cable. I want to see the removable back return. Alright? Where you can just take the battery out, because those phones were indestructible. I remember I had a Samsung Galaxy S3. I got mad one day, because at this point I was 15. I got mad one day and I chucked it against the floor full force. And while the thing separated, the back flew off, the battery came out, the phone went sliding somewhere, it didn't break. And if I chuck my S9 at the floor full force, you better believe the phone's not even going to be functional anymore. Or at least it's going to have a very, very big broken screen. And that's a $700 problem, as I talked about earlier. So I guess the thing I'm trying to say is, the distribution of the energy there was a great way to keep the phone functional after a drop. I think the worst thing that happened to the phone when I did that was there was a new scratch on the screen because it went sliding across the floor. That's the best you could ask for when you chuck a phone at the ground full force. And I remember Luke from Linus Tech Tips, he was saying one day he had a phone that had a plastic back that you could take off and replace battery. And he was late to class and when he was in college or high school or something. And he vaulted over a railing and the phone went flying out of his pocket. So he just had to collect the pieces, put it back together. And the phone still worked perfectly fine. So I'm not the only one with this issue. Who wants these phones back. And yeah, I'm pretty sure they are still being made, but they're not flagships anymore. The Note 4 had that ability. The Note 4 did that. Pretty sure even the Note 5 did too. And so it's one of the things, I yearn for that. I want that. I need it. Because it was so good. Because the phone, would hardly ever break. And now, I remember I used to sneak my phone into my classroom in my sock. And the teacher wouldn't bat an eye. Even though there's this big lump in my sock, and if it is not my phone, it should probably be looked at. But still, I'm sure my teacher fucking knew. So what I would do was whenever I would get bored in class and I didn't want to, or just didn't want to be there, I'd just say, I gotta go to the bathroom. And I'd go into the bathroom and I'd pull the phone out of my sock and I'd play Angry Birds. Um, so so yeah, that's a thing that happened. That I really am proud of. Actually, I'm actually really proud of that. But the thing, if I did that now, phones are so well. It's more or less that smartphones are so well known now that it'd be spotted a mile away. Plus, most kids, their parents get them something. They're like, "Oh, if you're ever in trouble, just call me. Here's how you do it." And then their kids start playing Angry Birds or whatever the hell they play now. Fortnite probably. Um. So, but what you get what I'm trying to say is, and I remember my iPhone 3. Those were also still very fragile little pieces of shit. Um. But I remember the most indestructible phone I ever had was the Samsung Galaxy S3 because it had the plastic back that you could remove, and this is a phone that already took some beatings, by the way, before it even was mine. Because before I got OnePlus One, I had a Nexus 4. So, which, speaking of the Nexus 4, fun fact, it is actually round the same spec of the supercomputer that sent man to the moon. So it's around the same spec. So here's what happened. My father is an IT guy and he works in factories. He does IT for factories. And he had the Samsung Galaxy S3 before I did. And he upgraded to OnePlus One. And then, so he gave me his S3 because my Nexus 4 was starting to act up. Like the screen was flashing purple. I could not use it. It was going to give me a seizure one of these days. And so my father gave me his S3. And I loved that phone. It was a good phone. It was a very good phone, actually. But the day before he gave it to me, he had to buy a new battery for it before he gave it to me and a new backplate because a coworker decided to play a prank and stapled the back of it. I'm not kidding. Like, he took a staple gun and just went blip to the back of the phone and it punctured the battery. So my father had to buy a new backplate and a new battery for it. But even still, with the staple being as long as it was and kind of going through some of the plastic that's behind the battery, the phone still worked perfectly fine. No problems with the phone. They were durable. And that's what I'm saying. Like, we need more durable phones. Eventually, I got it wet. And, and my father was like, hey, I'll finance this phone for you. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to have the same phone as my dad. And so I had the same phone as my dad until I dropped it in the toilet. So, I mean, at least it died a noble death. And phones are getting more and more waterproof. Like, most phones are either IP67 or IP68 waterproof rating now. And if they're not rated, they're still probably waterproof. Like, I know OnePlus 7 isn't rated officially, but it's probably IP67. I don't know how the pop-up camera affects it, but I was watching the Jerry Rig Everything video where he tore it down, and it seems to have all of its entry points sealed up pretty well. So I wanna know, like, because you have to pay to get it rated, and they do tests. I don't know how it works. All I know is you have to pay to get the device rated. And that's probably just something that OnePlus opted not to do. And But it's still, that doesn't mean it's a bad phone just because they didn't pay to get the IP rating. And so what I challenge all of you to do, especially you die-hard Apple fans, I challenge you to save up your money. All right? Get a $300 Android smartphone from either Blue or Huawei. Probably not Huawei because of everything going on with Huawei right now. Don't buy Huawei because you're not going to be able to get services for them. I'm not kidding. That is actually something that our government has decided cannot happen. Is they are imposing there might even be an import ban on Huawei devices at this point. I don't know. I don't know the full story, but I think spying through these devices is involved. Um, so either way, get a Blue phone or get one of the Samsung budget phones. Go out to your local Walmart and buy one of their burner smartphones for like $50, and just try and use it. Because I guarantee you'll be honestly surprised at just how good it is. See, I spent most of this time talking about flagship phones and the problem that flagship phones have, because even though they are flagships, they do have their fair share of issues. And while these, budget phones, they may have slightly more issues, they're not as big. They're not as powerful. They'll use pretty efficient hardware, and their batteries are going to be more or less the same as what you'll find in a flagship. Just because they already have those batteries on hand, so they're going to use them. There are even some companies out there who make flagship phones at budget phone price. Like $300, but I'd consider a budget phone like $50 to $150. You can even find some Blue phones are very similar to iPhones in spec, build quality, and I'm gonna say it, durability. Apple phones are not durable. I'm gonna say it. And I'm not taking it back. Fuck you. So, anyways, you're able to get everything done with this. You're able to use them. Yeah, they may not have all the features that you want, but it's a phone. So ultimately what I'm saying is these problems don't matter. Despite the fact that phones are ultimately a necessity in modern day America and even in some other places around the world, they're still a luxury to most of us. Because we don't need them. We could still use the mail system. That's one thing that we could still be using, but we're not really anymore. Oh, it's grandma's birthday. I'm gonna send her an email because she has a laptop now. She's got an internet connection now. Oh, and plus phones are for the better. You get into a car crash, say it's pretty severe, you're trapped in your car, you can call 911 and they'll be there as fast as they can. Or say you fall ill. Say you just collapse one day. You're in the hospital. Your ICE contacts will all be called and they'll be told what happened. My S9 has an SOS mode where if I triple tap the power button, it will text 4 contacts of my choice, send them a picture from the front and back camera and a link to track my location. And thankfully, I've never had to use it for tracking. But when I got into the car crash in my Mazda, I immediately triple tapped the power button on my watch. It sent out the SOS. And my mother called the police. They were there immediately. They handled the situation. I was not physically harmed, but I was in so much shock that I could not move. So I had that going for me. But still, like, we don't need phones. We want phones. Yeah, phones are nice for communication, and they are more or less a necessity today. You know, you can't really communicate with your job any other way. You know, they're not going to go through the effort of sending out a letter when they could just call you, and it's much easier. You know, there's no chance that it's going to the wrong person. Well, there is, but if it does go to the wrong person, it's a much easier mistake to fix. Like, you just be like, oh, sorry, I called the wrong number. Rather than, oh shit, I sent this letter with extremely personal information to the wrong person. So, I mean, the best job I had was at Megaplay. She would text me my schedule. She would text me all this information. And that's just how it was. She'd call occasionally, you know, like, oh, just so you know, like, you've been working 4 to 11 on Thursdays. You're actually working 8 to 4 this Thursday. Something like that. And it's one of those things where I really appreciated that. And it made my life working there a whole lot easier than going through punching into my phone. Because she did this with all of her employees, because she only had like 5 employees. So she had the time to go through text every single one of them. Hey, just a reminder, you're supposed to be here, you know, in like 30 minutes. And she was very accepting, and I loved that about that job. Is she used technology better than any other company I've worked for. And granted, this is an arcade. But still, it was so great to see someone do that. I was so happy. You know, anyways, you know, as I'm saying, phones, they are a luxury. We don't need them. So I challenge you to go out and buy a budget phone and just use that, because it'll get the job done. It will call, it will text, and it will play a few games. Because you don't need these expensive flagships. We may want them, yeah, and we may get mad when they don't work. We may get mad when the budget ones don't work. But we still use them. You know? Because more or less, we need to. Our brains have adapted to take the hits of dopamine differently than before. We take in information in a much different way. We've achieved a 24-hour news cycle. And a lot of people think we're living in a dystopia, which I don't think I can really argue with that. But still, we don't need these phones. We just need a phone. You know? These phones they're completely unnecessary. You know, we don't need a phone that can rival my laptop, as I said in the beginning of this. So, that's my challenge to you. Go out, buy a $50 smartphone, activate it, and just try and use it for a week. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised with everything that these phones can do. Now, I'm not asking us to all go back to before smartphones where we had to carry a pager, a camera, and all this other stuff when we went on vacation, because now it's so much simpler. We just take our phone, we're already going to be in contact with our friends by just taking our phone, and our phones have such good cameras now that we don't even need to worry about getting a camera. And especially not one of those fucking disposable cameras. God, I remember those things. At Disneyland, you'd go to Disneyland with your family and they'd buy you a disposable camera and you just waste taking a bunch of pictures at the same time of your favorite fucking character. Oh my God, I remember that. I went through 3 disposable cameras when I was at Disneyland when I was like 6, and each and every single one of them I was just like click, 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 click. just taking pictures of Winnie the Pooh. I fucking remember that. It was great. I didn't get any memories. All I have is like 30 pictures of Winnie the Pooh. I'm not even joking. Then my father got me like a VTech camera and an SD card, and I took like 100 pictures of Lightning McQueen. That was fun. Anyways, thank you all for listening to this podcast, and I really hope that you all take me up on that challenge, because I feel like it's important for everyone to just, at least try it out. You know, I've had I've had my fair share of smartphones for how long I've had a smartphone. But still, like, I'm really considering, like, removing myself from smartphones and as a whole, and just getting a old BlackBerry. Easier to text on than, just a standard flip phone. But I'm really considering getting one and just using that. Anyways, guys, my name's Juan Wanderson. I'll be seeing you next time.